Hello everyone, this is Team Restart, and this time we're talking about a whole bunch of new information for the Duskbloods. This weekend we are getting the network test, and with it we're about to learn a whole bunch more about this game, and we've actually already been learning a fair bit about this game, including some recent leaks that tell us more about what's going on here, and all this new info is getting everyone very excited for this release, so that's what we're diving into today. Now before continuing, let me ask that if you find yourselves enjoying my videos, and if you haven't subscribed already, to please subscribe. So again, the parent company of From Software, Kadokawa, has reconfirmed another time that the Duskbloods is still planned to release in this year of 2026. And I think this is actually a very big deal, because we're getting this information in mid-August. We are already well into the second half of the year. So the fact that multiple times we've had it reconfirmed that this game is still planned for this year of 2026, I would say bodes well, especially if it's still happening this late into the year, and when we're about to get a whole bunch of new information about the Duskbloods. And what I also find interesting about this situation, with this network test about to happen, timing-wise, as I've brought up in a few prior videos, if we look at the time frame between the Night Rain network test and when it released, this would position the Duskbloods to come out in December if it follows a similar timeline. And considering what Nintendo has announced for this year, December honestly makes the most sense for the Duskbloods to come out. I've talked about this before. I know some people are in disagreement of this, but so maybe somehow the game comes out in October. I do think it could fit into October alongside Switch Sports Resort. But also December makes a lot of sense. Nintendo has released various significant hardcore titles in December before, such as Metroid Prime 4, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. In the case of Smash Bros. And Xenoblade, they are the most successful entries in their respective series to date. So I don't think a December release for the Duskbloods is really that out of the question, and honestly, that's what makes the most sense right now based off all the information we've been getting, but we shall see. Anyway, the network test is about to begin. It's already available to download. As we see here said by the official Duskbloods page, game data for the closed network test is now available to download. Participants can find their download codes by logging into the network test website. Please try to download and install the game data prior to the start of the network test. And here is the link right there. I'll have it in the description below. But from downloading this, we've actually learned even more about the Duskbloods here. And we'll be getting into that, including some leaks, but just stay tuned. There's a few more things I want to clear up here. So, for example, the time zones. Maybe you're confused about the time zones. From the Eastern Standard Time, these are the times you'll be able to play the game. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. tomorrow, Friday, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Also Friday going into early Saturday, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Sunday, and then 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Sunday going into Monday. These are the times to play the Duskbloods. So very early in the morning, or very late at night, or perhaps on Saturday in the middle of the day. Now, one of the things we have learned, now that people have the Duskbloods on their Switch 2s, is that the game activates 120Hz mode on the Switch 2. So this means the game can either run at 60 frames per second, or it can run at 40 FPS in handheld mode. Either way, that's a pretty big deal, but as someone else points out in this thread right here, 3D Burn, in the June Nintendo Direct, the trailer is 60 FPS. Japan Nintendo never put 60 FPS trailers that their exclusive games can't do, so it's 60 FPS. It's really interesting to think about it, because the Duskbloods is an exclusive Nintendo Switch 2 title, so you would think it would be highly optimized for the console, and this might facilitate the game running at a higher frame rate. It's one thing when we're talking about AAA third-party ports, those coming over, like Elden Ring for example, and that running at 30 when that's an open world game. The Duskbloods is not an open world game, it's exclusive for Nintendo Switch 2, it's been optimized for the console, and there's a huge focus on competitive play. So having 60 FPS enabled, or at least 40 FPS enabled in handheld mode, is going to make for a huge difference here. This game is looking to be running pretty smooth. Now, something else that people have learned now that we've been able to pre-download the Duskbloods onto our Switch 2 is the menu theme for the Duskbloods. It sounds great. I've had it playing throughout this video, and I will continue to do so. What people are noticing about this music here, it really gives off Bloodborne vibes. A lot of people have been speculating that the Duskbloods in many ways is kind of like a spiritual successor to Bloodborne. People have been calling for a sequel to Bloodborne for such a long time. Bloodborne was actually my first From Software title, so I hold it in special regard. I love the dark gothic atmosphere, the environments. It's such a cool game. And with the Duskbloods here, we are getting some very similar vibes, and the music really helps to sell that. It's very cool. I'm getting more and more excited just listening to this and learning everything there is to learn about the Duskbloods before we get to play it this weekend. And I still haven't even gotten to the leaks yet. I will be in a moment here, but here's something else that people have heard from Nate the Hate. On Reset Era, here he says, select outlets played the game late last month in Japan. Per my understanding, their previews will be based on the same content that the network test will offer later this week. So previews are about to come out, and we're going to be getting a lot of impressions from journalists. Perhaps they will learn a little bit more as well if they got a chance to ask questions with the representatives there at these preview events. But it seems like now the Duskbloods is getting pushed, and perhaps more official information will be coming out relatively soon. Some people have been calling for a Nintendo Direct to happen a little bit sooner than later. When you think about this need for information about the Duskbloods and also the Ocarina of Time remake, us getting release dates for these games, I think it does make sense to think that maybe a Direct could be happening in this month of August. That would be great. Of course, historically speaking, we've gotten them in September, and usually not in the first week of September, so we'll see. But regardless, that information is coming. And now on to the really big leak here. 14 classes have been leaked for the Duskbloods, and here are the descriptions for them. Blood Eater, Walter, the sole survivor of an extinct clan of rare blood hunters. He uses his extraordinary sense of smell to track the blind spots in others' paths. He descended into madness after repeatedly licking the blood spatter from his sister, whom he himself had killed, and still walks the line between life and death in search of pure blood. This seems like the main character, or if there's going to be a main character, this is the one. This is the one we've seen throughout the promotional material. I believe this is a character we see at the very beginning of the first Duskbloods trailer. It does make a fair bit of sense, but there's 13 others to go through here, so let's continue to read through. Guillotine Gillian, an executioner of the Marispel Inquisition. He carries a massive iron guillotine blade on his back, having been exposed to too much blood over the years. He has begun to mutate himself and now wanders in search of the blood of the beginning before his own head is severed. Interesting. Falrot, Veronica, a blind nun abandoned in the basement of a ruined cathedral. She inflicts self-harm to spread the grotesque blood blisters multiplying inside her body. The footprints that she leaves behind instantly cause anything they touch to rot. So maybe Veronica would be good at setting up a lot of traps. Nail-pierced Sebastian, a fanatic saint who drives silver nails into various parts of his body, using the blood flow as a catalyst for miracles. By inflicting wounds on himself, he temporarily gains overwhelming ferocity, but his mind and body are already completely broken. So I'm kind of getting the vibe here that Sebastian can create passive effects, maybe not just for himself, but for others as well. We'll see. Because keep in mind that this is a PvPvE game. You can work against each other or also with each other. Coffin Bearer Maurice, a man who continued to collect corpses on the streets of Temerat at dusk. A mud-like monstrosity that was once his family writhes inside the iron coffin he carries on his back. By slamming the coffin against enemies, he sucks up their blood and feeds it to the creature inside. I assume at some point you can let the creature out for a big attack. That makes sense. Thread-torn Oscar, a deranged taxidermist who sews the flesh of beasts from all eras and regions directly onto his body. During battle, he seizes enemy tissue and uses it to eerily patch and reinforce himself. Through the accumulation of tainted power, he transforms his own body into that of an ancient, rare beast. So, I think this is probably the character that looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something in the trailer, and from what I'm understanding here, throughout battle, he can patch himself and reinforce himself, so perhaps when he takes damage, he can actually heal himself up, and so this character might actually have some pretty good stamina throughout your run. Mud Treader Olin, a female warrior who gained superhuman leg strength through human experimentation. Filthy blood constantly gushes from her ankles, and a red poisonous swamp forms wherever she runs. So, This is similar to the other character where they're leaving something behind, perhaps that can cause a little bit of a terrain hazard if people are chasing her, but also I get the vibe this character is going to be highly acrobatic with great movement, so this one will probably be really fun to play, especially from a platforming perspective. Candle Snuffer Isabel, a former waitress at the Silterra Noble Mansion. She possesses the ability to materialize shadows and trap her enemy's blood within them to drain it. All light vanishes from the places she passes through, creating darkness, like literal darkness as you play. That would be cool. Gutrunner Randolph, an assault trooper of the Sampier Weapons Corps, equipped with a back-mounted mechanism that allows him to fly freely and a massive piercing spear. He rips through his opponent's flesh and blood along with their armor. His abdomen is heavily mechanized, enabling him to unleash devastating wide-area attacks using Bloodlust as a catalyst. So he has some pretty good spread damage, it looks like, and also the ability to fly around. It doesn't seem like every character can do that. I imagine there's going to be a little bit of a balancing here. Maybe he's not that good in terms of up-close combat, but from a distance, flying around, doing spread damage, swooping in when you see a good opportunity, that seems to be Randolph's advantages from what I'm reading here. Gazer of Flesh Yuri, a heretical observer who cut off his own eyelids. He possesses the ability to intensify a target's blood flow simply by fixing his gaze on them, causing their body to explode from within. Okay, that sounds pretty crazy. Ashcrown Camilla, a girl whose clan was burned to the ground. She wields Blood Ash, a mixture of the victim's ashes and her own blood, to petrify and crystallize her enemies before shattering them. That's going to be a really cool effect to see, and perhaps could be used to slow down hordes of enemies if there are multiple coming at you at certain points. Rust Gospel Balder, a former priest of Kimitsu who has stuffed his mouth with large amounts of scrap iron and needles. Every time he utters a prayer, his mouth is torn apart and the mist of blood he spits out becomes a powerful attack. Perhaps another form of spread damage we'll be seeing from this character here. Dusk Silt Elsa, a woman whose dusk disease has progressed to its final stage. When attacked, her body transforms into a blood mud-like substance, allowing her to evade attacks and flow freely, then inject her own poisonous blood directly into her opponent's body. So this character appears to be more evasive. I like that there's a lot of options here. And then finally here, First Shard Nameless Shadow, an imperfect mass of flesh known as First Blood, incapable of understanding language and lacking any sense of its own origins, a cursed being that eerily mimics and unleashes techniques of every bloodline. I'm curious about what's going on here. Maybe I'm missing something, but it seems like we'll probably won't have access to all these classes at first. Like this last one here seems like something we would unlock. Having it from the very beginning might be kind of tough, but also maybe that's kind of part of the point. I'd imagine if you can do kind of every sort of crazy thing from the different bloodlines, there's a lot of options there, but it may be hard to master and get a good grip on. And I think it's worth pointing out that with all these classes, we've already come to understand from the interview with Miyazaki about this game from last year that there's going to be a fair amount of customization. So these classes are just the beginning, and you'll be able to further differentiate them as you play through the game and acquire more resources to customize your characters. Now, if you're curious on how some of these characters look, Amigo P on Twitter seems to have a good understanding of who's who. Reading through it, it kind of checks out to me. Blood Eater Walter, that main character. Ashcrown Camilla, we see this little girl here. Rust Gospel Balder, it makes sense, he does look like a priest. Guillotine, that does seem to check out. Thread Torn Oscar, given that he looks like a dinosaur, that makes sense. Gutrunner Randolph, we saw him flying, so that one also makes sense. Some others are less confident, so you have Dusk Silt Elsa here, and we have Gazer of Flesh Yuri here, and then a few others, Candle Snuffer Isabel, and Neil Pierce Sebastian. He's got something weird going on with his hand, so perhaps that checks out. We shall see. But this is the summation of all the Duskbloods info that has come out as of late. There's a lot going on here. The network test is about to begin. I'm going to be playing it. I'm excited about it. We'll be talking about it, so stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed. But I'll see you all really soon. Let me know what you all think in the comments below. This is Andres Restart. Take care. Bye.